Hello and welcome to my video, lesson 3.5 all the way to 3.7, decimal long division. So just a couple definitions out of the way before we can get started. Quotient would be the top part at the top. This is the quotient. So that is the answer of division. Okay, so that's the answer, the final answer that you would box or circle or whatever, the one that you'd report as your final answer. The dividend is the thing that is being divided. So you say 16 divided by 8. The thing being divided is the 16. That would be the dividend. So if I were to use another, if I were to use another example, maybe go like this. 24 divided by 4 equals 6. That would be the same as what's going on here, with this being the quotient. And now here, this is the divisor. The divisor is the thing that's doing the dividing. So the 4 here would be the part that's doing the dividing. Okay, so that is just a couple definitions out of the way. So keep that in mind when you look at this, these steps that I've written out. Okay, so you're going to repeat these steps per digit that you see, per number essentially that you see, starting on the left, always starting on the left. So I'm just going to read the steps and then I'm going to go through a couple examples. See how many times the divisor can fit in the dividend. Then write the resulting number above. So how many times and then above. Second step, multiply, then below. Then you write your answer below. Then you subtract by that number and write the result below. Okay, so let's go through this step by step. Okay, step 1. Well, let's change the color. Let's use a nice purple. Okay, so step 1, how many times can the divisor fit into the number? Well, if we look here, how many times can 5 fit into the 4? Well, it's 0 times. So we could write a 0 here. All right, and since, well, let's continue. Let's go by step. So how many times can it fit? Well, 0 times. Multiply that number by the divisor. So the 0 times by the divisor, which is the 5, and that is 0. So this whole thing is 0, subtract 0, well, it actually stays exactly the same. So step 3 was subtracting, and it stays exactly the same. Okay, looking at the next digit, the next column, because we always go step by step, repeat per column. Now we're going to look here. At the next column, we have 7. But we still have some left over from the column before. So we actually have 47. So how many times can 5 fit into 47? Well, I can remember that 9 times 5 is 45. So that will fit into 47. Okay, it's always how many times, like the most that you could fit in. So 45, okay, so now we're left with 265. Okay, because we multiplied. 9 times 5 is 45. Then we subtracted, step 3, to get this answer. Okay, now we look at the next column, which is the 6, but we still have the leftover 2. So 26, how many times can 5 fit into 26? Well, 5 can fit in, if we have 5 times. Okay, now we multiply 5 times 5 is 25. Then we subtract, step 3, and we're left with 15. Then we see how many times can 5 fit into the 5, but there's a leftover 1, so it's 15. How many times can 5 fit into 15? 3 times. 5 times 3 is 15. And that would be our final answer. Now, without a decimal, we would just get rid of that 0 at the front. Okay? With a decimal, we would have had a decimal in there, in which case we would have dealt with that. But now let's look at a decimal option. So it's the same steps, exactly the same steps, just that you have a decimal that you have to keep track of as well. But let's start here. So how many times can 2 fit into 9? Well, we can fit it in 4 times, giving us 8. So we have this number here. We're going to subtract by that. We're going to be left with 1.638. And don't forget your decimal. Now, how many times can 2 fit into 16? 8 times, giving us 16, or 1/6. Subtracting, now we're left with 0.038. Now looking in that 3 column, how many times can 2 fit into 3? Can fit in 1 time. Keeping careful track of everything here. Now we're left with 18. Now looking at that 8 column, and we have a leftover 1, we need to see how many times 2 can fit into 18. Well, it's 9 times, which is all 18, and it equals 0. So that would be our final answer. Feel free to pause it ahead of time, try this question out, and then see if you have the same answer as me. Actually, let's go side by side so you can see how step by step I'm doing everything. Use a different color. How many times can 6 fit into 1? 0 times. So, I mean, at this point you could subtract by 0.000000, or you can just leave it and it doesn't make a difference. Whoopsies. That makes a difference. So either way is fine. You don't need to have that the subtracting by 0. That's okay. Next column, we've got the 5 and a leftover 1. So how many times can 6 fit into 15? Well, 2 times, giving us a total of 12. So if we keep track of that, we have 0.3612. Okay, now looking at the next column, in the 6th column there, which is the hundredths place, how many times can 6 fit into 36? Well, it can fit 6 times with 0.36. Subtracting down, we have 1.00012. Now, how many times can 6 fit into 1? Well, 0 times. So now we look at the next column, the 2. So how many times can 6 fit into not 2, but 12, because we have a leftover 1? Well, it can fit in 2 times. So now we're able to go like this, 0.0012, subtract, and it gives us 0. And that's our final answer. It's always step by step the same. How many times can it fit? Then you multiply, then you subtract, then you repeat. How many times can it fit? Then you multiply, then you subtract, then you repeat. Okay, and last question here. Same exact deal, except starts with the 0 decimal. So it's really no different. As long as you've been keeping the same method going along, this is going to be no surprise, and it's not going to be any difficult to you. So how many times can 2 fit into 0? 0 times. So how many times can 2 fit into 4? 2 times. If you have two of those, you'd get that, and when you subtract, you're left with 0.086. Then you look in the 8 column, or the hundredths column. How many times can 2 fit into 8? 4 times. 0.08. Subtract that. Now we're left with 0.006. So the 6, or the thousandths column. How many times can 2 fit into 6? 3 times. 1, 2, 3 zeros. 3 times 2 is 6. Then you subtract, and we're left with 0. So, I hope that by doing all those examples, you're able to pause, check your answers, and make sure that you understand this. It's just 3 steps repeated over and over and over again. So if you follow these 3 steps, you will get the right answer. You just have to get used to this method. Good luck, and I hope that this helps.